Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Naven Gaming. Today we are reacting to Caiaphas Cain, the Emperor's silliest clown, fighting his funniest battle. Oh, I'm recording this one a little early in the morning, so I kind of just woke up for this. But yeah, I will be making the announcements here on this video because it's probably going to reach the most people. I will also be making a post of it also later after this video. But I'm going to have to. I'm thinking about either doing the Metal Gear stream, the continuation of the Metal Gear stream on the either on Sunday or Monday. Well, actually, no, I can't do it Monday, but I'm either going to do it Sunday or Tuesday. And that's only if I can get the time to not have to show up to work on Sunday. I'm planning to use PPTO or some shit for it. I have no idea. We'll see how that all pans out, but otherwise, yeah. It can't be Monday because I got other priorities on that day now, which is unfortunate, but I will be able to do it either the next day or I'll be able to do it on Sunday. Hopefully Sunday. But otherwise, yeah, just letting y'all know. Hope to see you all there because I'm really enjoying Metal Gear Solid Delta. It definitely seems like it's just a complete remake of the original game. Nothing new has been added, nothing new has been done to it. It's just a straight up bona fide remake of an all time classic, which I guess you can't really say that you can go wrong. I mean, with that idea, I mean, why try to fix something that ain't broke, right? But yeah. I've been enjoying it because it's just Metal Gear Solid 3 with better graphics. And if that isn't a glowing endorsement, I don't know what is. The original game was an all-time classic. Got a great story, great gameplay, and this one's got even better gameplay with much more quality of life features. So there you have, there you go, there you have it. And even the game's been redesigned and built around that new gameplay elements. So just something to keep in mind. If you ever wanted to get into Snake Eater, I would definitely say that the original game is good, but if you want to jump into Delta, so far, I can definitely say that it's not a bad jumping on point if you're someone who wants to play a Metal Gear game or wants to play or experience the Metal Gear series for the first time. This is not a bad game to start with. But, yeah, enough of that. We need to get into this reaction.
Warhammer 40k, as you all know, is full of people that love nothing more than to make sure their way of thinking is dominant in the galaxy, and will throw themselves into the fray over and over and over again to ensure this comes to pass. The Black Templars, Crafter Biltan, pretty much all of Chaos, these are the ones that come first to me in my mind, but they're hardly the only maniacal, murderous nutjobs obsessed with fighting everything until it's all
Be
dead.
sure to
And of
like and
course, even though the
subscribe to the
standards of this
original
setting,
video, by
some
the way.
people in it are a bit more level-headed, there's not really many people that'll choose to back down from a fight. And then we have Caiaphas Cain. Commissar Ciaphas Cain, hero of the Imperium, one of the best and most intelligent warriors it has at its disposal, and a massive, massive coward. Fighting to ensure mankind's dominance is about the last thing on his mind at any given moment. I am no doubt sure that you know this. He's one of the more popular characters in the 40k setting by virtue of just how different he is from anything else in it. Where most characters will either rapidly throw themselves into a fight or throw themselves into a fight but complain about how grim and dark it is the whole time, Caiaphas Cain is going to run for the hills the moment he sees he has a chance to do so. And I can't blame him in the slightest for it. So to begin the new year, a fun video for everyone. Instead of finding some hidden bit of lore or analyzing the pros and cons of an army, I'm going to talk about the protagonist of my second favorite series of books right behind Godric and Felix. Get ready to learn about how you can be a massive coward, a selfish jerk, and the greatest hero possible all at the same time. And
Damn.
before I begin to ramble on, you should know that this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Millions of people around the world already play it, and please, allow me to explain why you should join the ranks. To show you some of Raid's massive supply of heroes and champions to recruit, let's take a look at one of their most recent additions of the game, the Sylvan Watchers. Nature, as you no doubt know, is natural, and therefore is everywhere by
How old
default,
is
where
this
some
game?
people choose to go
I'm in
through
that
all the
game.
work of building
2 years
grand
ago.
cities,
The video's
monuments, and
2
more
years
to
old.
solidify their holdings. The Sylvan Watchers said, nah,
Yeah.
this seems like a lot of work,
Yeah, that
and chose
tracks.
to live in big trees instead. Of course, this is still a fantasy setting, so the jungle of Mistwood they live in isn't exactly a place where non-Sylvans can just waltz into all willy-nilly. No, what's most likely to happen is that you're either going to be devoured by the mythical beasts within, or the Silvers are going to turn you into fertilizer for their jungle homes. I have to admit, they're at least environmentally friendly with their murder, and they do have a city for outsiders known as Neressa, so if you just can't help yourself, there's a place for you in Sylvan society. And they've got damn fine champions in their ranks. As usual, I will judge them based entirely off of aesthetic preferences, because the drip or drown, and brother, I'm floating. I quite like Pathfinder Kate because she reminds me of Vermintide. I'm also a big fan of Duaden the Runic because I like big monsters that smash things real goodly, and he... Is this thing a he? Whatever it is, it certainly qualifies.
You know, I've
Of
been
course, there's
playing
more to talk
Vermintide
about with Raid
recently.
this month. There's still time for you to get in on the 12 Days of Raid Christmas event, going on until January 10th. Once you download the game, you can go to 12daysofraid.plarium.com and paste your in-game player code there. Link is, of course, in the description. Once you do, you can go on some very fun festive adventures, including a new minigame to unlock all sorts of goodies, which includes holiday-themed champions and even up to $1,000 in Amazon gift cards. Now that's a spicy reward. It's available to all new players, and by clicking on the link, already existing players can also get a festive little gift by using a special holiday promo code you can find after clicking the link. And once again, Ronda Rousey, the actual real-life fighter, is still available to unlock for all players, just by logging in 7 times between now and February 20th. And if you use the promo code RAIDRONDA, you get a 3-day 100% XP boost, 500k silver, and 5 full energy refills to make sure she can beat the ever-loving shit out of whatever you throw her at. If you still aren't convinced, I've got one more offer for you. After using my network of crack spies and operatives, I've secured a deal for you all. Using my link in the description or the QR code on screen right now, staring you down like the Eye of Sauron, you can get $35 worth of goodies. The Epic Chanting Jotun, 100k silver, 50 gems, and 2 epic skill tomes to boost you even higher in Raid. All of this will be waiting for you in the inbox. That's the treasure chest with the finger pointing to it on screen. Rewards are available for 30 days and for new players only, so download Raid now, use my link in the description to get some goodies, and I'll see you there. Now then, time for the funny man with the funny hat to be a funny guy. To be clear, this entire video is going to be littered with spoilers, so if you would rather not have them randomly revealed to you throughout it, then perhaps this isn't the video for you. I will for the most part try to keep them to a minimum, but this video is mostly just to talk about the fun times Cain had, and it's hard to do that without spoiling something. So if you want to be kept in the dark, maybe it's best to click away now. We all clear on that? Everyone good to go? Splendid. Ciaphas Cain started his life out on a hive world. I can't tell you which hive world because no one knows and he never brought it up himself. And if the Inquisition can't find out where he's from, I'm not going to bother trying to do it myself. Beyond that, something you'll come to find out is that he's
everybody knows that
narrator and a pretty good
any
hunk
type
what he
of data
says is no doubt
collection
complete
is
and
shit.
utter crap. That being said, at least according to himself, his parents were killed on the line of duty serving in the Imperial Guard, and thus he was shunted off to the commissariat to learn how to be one of those gun-toting, team-killing monuments of human compassion. Apparently, the guy in charge of teaching Cain didn't quite manage to get it into his head that commissars are supposed to be assholes, because by all accounts, Cain is a decent person, if for no other reason than self-interest. Having made it through his training with resoundingly mediocre scores, interesting sports and combat training, which as an aside, why the hell are commissars learning how to play rugby as part of their training, he began his career attached to the Valhallan 12th Field Artillery Regiment. The entire reason he chose to do this is because as an artillery regiment, they were the people least likely to have to actually fight anything. To paraphrase the man himself, all you really need to do is sit back and lob shells at someone several miles away. Of course, the second thing you need to know about Cain is that he is perhaps the unluckiest man in the entire 40k galaxy, surpassed maybe only by the Lamenter Space Marine chapter. When deployed to face the Tyranids in his first major...
This guy is starting to sound like he's got an impressive rap sheet. Also, why are these subtitles so small? Yeah, he sounds like he's got an impressive rap sheet, to be sure. So you mean to tell me there is an entire story about a guy who's actually probably nicer than most commissars, who is not that big of a douchebag, but has the problem and tendency of not just being unlucky, but he's also just a bona fide coward. What a weird character quality. I'm already intrigued by this story. And I don't even know much about this guy quite yet. Could be interesting. Yeah, because normally when you get into when you hear about characters in these settings, they're either usually just like massive douchebags, or they're just usually like they're really cool because they're really, really like boots to the ground, balls to the wall type of either military strategist, or they either are really good at motivating people to do shit, really good at killing things, or they just are really good at outsmarting their enemies, or just, managing their resources for their, for the battlefield. They're basically playing RTS on extreme, and they know how to fucking read the AI from front to back. That kind of thing. And there's no better story that explains that than the person who even was who was the head of the Astra Militarum again? I don't remember, but that guy, he was leading the entirety of the Cadian defense, and he ended up getting captured or taken away by that one Necron who showed up to kind of help out with the war effort when it came to understanding not only why Chaos was invading, but also just to kind of clarify that there were only there not necessarily to kill Cadia, but to destroy the pylon that was on it. So, which is interesting. Apparently, after Cadia fell, that's when all the pylons were gone, and then the only thing holding Chaos back from spreading across the galaxy was finally gone, and so the Chaos warp energies started like leaking outwards towards the rest of the galaxy, cutting off like a small part of the rim of our Milky Way galaxy, like away from the rest of it. So, yeah, it was a devastating story, to be sure, for the Imperium, but devastating time. But it did lead to the rise and return of Gilliman. So, you know, there's some good with some bad. And I guess if you're gonna take away something as major as Cadia from the Imperium, you gotta bring something to the Imperium to kind of like recuperate in some degree. You can't just take a heavy loss like that and not have some means to up the ante a little bit, right? Because otherwise, it's gonna seem like that the Imperium is kind of losing the war efforts, and it's gonna kind of tip the balance of power a little too much in Chaos's favor or the other factions' favor. So, it's all about balance. And this is just balancing for narrative reasons. But anyways, enough of my yapping.
Major engagement, Cain saw that things were getting just a little bit dicey and casually decided that it was now or never. So he commandeered a vehicle to commit just a slight bit of desertion. Unfortunately for Cain, which is a phrase that applies very frequently to his life, he ran into an unnoticed flanking swarm of Tyranids and immediately turned the hell back around. He radioed in for anyone, to start firing artillery guns behind him, and when he got back to base, it was believed that instead of running for his life, he had heroically gone on a scouting mission and baited a Tyranid force into chasing him right into a killing zone. He even saved the life of Jurgen, who was soon to be his commissarial aide / paperwork bitch for the rest of his career. Not wanting to admit that he just tried to run for his life, since that probably would have gotten him shot, Cain humbly accepted the praise that was being heaped upon him. What stands out most to me is that the guy in charge of the regiment, Colonel Mostru, if I'm remembering that correctly, never fully believed Cain. Indeed, for the rest of his life, he was the only one who ever had any doubts about Cain's heroic reputation. Aside from Amberly Vale, but she read his memoirs, so that's kind of cheating. From there, Cain would go on to form a bond with a few people in the regiment, including an artillery gunner who was one of the only people to ever call him by his first name, or rather, he just kept calling him Kai. This pissed Cain off, but either the guy was completely oblivious to it, or he just found it funny to annoy Cain. From there, he would soon find out that while going along with him being a hero meant he wouldn't be killed for dereliction of duty, his reputation meant that he was expected to be a lot more of a frontline combatant than he had ever wanted to be. Feeling pressure to keep accepting these tasks for fear of being found out and executed, his reputation kept growing and growing and growing, which meant that he was given even more dangerous tasks and responsibilities over time, which meant his reputation would grow more and more. He remarks on this several times, so to the series' credit, it never really gets annoying or too self-pitying. Plus, it's just really funny watching him dig himself further in the hole he created for himself. Eventually,
you mean to tell me this motherfucker literally just kept accepting dangerous jobs just so people wouldn't find out that he's an utter coward? That's fucking hilarious. That is the funniest fucking thing I think I've heard so far. I can't imagine. I can't imagine a funnier story about a guy who was a complete coward, trying really, really hard not to get found out and then immediately executed for their cowardice by simply accepting more dangerous jobs and proceeding to possibly be even more cowardice. That is crazy. That is the funniest fucking story I have ever. The idea for a story I've ever heard. The idea for a character. The idea that something like this could exist is just hilarious to me. But you know, there is something to be said about people who are very, very cowardly being forced to do really, really dangerous things. And if that's they don't find shortcuts around the issue to either not engage in the thing that they are trying to actively get away from, there is also something to be said about putting someone who does not want to die in a situation where the likelihood of dying is tenfold and see what happens, right? Because there's a level of will and survivability there that can only be described as just nutty. When you put people in a position where they have to fight for their life if they want to make it to see another day. It is crazy. But otherwise, yeah, that's just funny.
Eventually, he would find himself given a job to the Commissariat Command. Now, you might think he'd be ecstatic about this, and at first he was. But his reputation meant that whenever a commissar was needed for a dangerous job, the first person people thought to ask was good old Ciaphas Cain. This list of crap he was put through includes, but is not limited to, several campaigns against the craft world Eldar, cleansing a space Hulk that some Astartes and tech priests had a massive cyber boner over, and a trip that led to him being the only survivor after a tomb world started reawakening during an expedition to it. Of note is that this little adventure of his is the one that left him most scarred out of anything he ever did. And for reference, he has at least on one occasion been kidnapped by Eldar who were likely of the dark variety. He even lost 2 of his fingers. I mentioned this little story partly because it shows how badass he is that he got lost inside a tomb complex that was able to escape, and partly because it shows that chaos isn't the scariest thing in the galaxy by a wide margin. Because if there was anyone familiar with being afraid, it was Cain, so he undoubtedly knew who was truly scary. To those of you who disagree with my assessment, please lick my taint. After this sort of thing happened enough times, he begged to be given back to a regiment to work with, because apparently serving with the active combatants is less dangerous in this setting than filing paperwork. Though to be fair, Jurgen is the one who did most of the paperwork. He was given command of the combined remains of the Valhallan 301st and 296th regiments, and they fucking hated each other. The only reason they were combined was because Tyranids had eaten the rest of the lot and reinforcements wouldn't be sufficient enough to bring him back to full strength. One was all female, the other was all male. His first job as the regimental commissar was to figure out how to make them get along in time to prevent them from all killing each other, because at least a few of them had decided to do just that. To do this, he disciplined those who were the worst offenders, though not in the traditional way of bolt gun to the face. Things like the treen duty for the next year, or something like that. After this, he renamed the regiment the Valhallan 597th, an absolutely ingenious move he came up with by adding their numbers together. It fostered unity between the two once separate groups while honoring the fact they were once 2 different regiments. He kept himself in their good graces further by coming up with a tradition among the regiment of actually rewarding good behavior and things beyond suicidal bayonet charges, as well as improving morale by way of speeches, camaraderie, and other feel-good methods instead of blowing someone's head off because they suggested things were anything less than 100% perfect. Funnily enough for Cain, he brought the 2 regiments together so well that he went from having to discipline people for things like murdering their fellow soldiers, to disciplining the troops for things like lovers' quarrels and getting each other pregnant in an active war zone. Going forward,
You know, that's not necessarily the worst problem to have. Although I can imagine that if you're trying to get them to fight, it's going to be kind of hard to get them to do that, if they're too busy kind of, getting down and dirty. It's understandable. Although I would say that that in itself is its own sort of I would say that there's definitely a bit more of a power dynamic there, because at least it means that they'll be willing to fight just a little bit harder now. Just a little bit. There's definitely a motivator there that he could certainly utilize. But, yeah, I can see why there might be an issue here. So he basically got 2 different regiments to work together that were based off of 2 different specifically they were just like they were regiments of just exclusively of like one gender, and he got them to work to he got both the male and female regiments to work together without bickering, without getting really, really salty. And he did this so well that they went full circle, sort of, and was just like, you know what? I went from hating you to now I want to bone you. What a fucking Chad. What a fucking story. I don't how he is the greatest wingman of all time. I would trust Caiaphas Cain to essentially help me navigate Tinder, to navigate the dating market. I would trust him with my life and my reputation at this point, because clearly the man knows what he's doing.
Forward, he would spend the most of his career with this newly formed regiment, actually forming a close relationship with the two leading officers of it. I cannot understate the importance of this, because commissars are almost always considered to be the biggest asshole in the army by the rest of it. The only other one I can think of off the top of my head who wasn't disliked if not outright hated by his troops was Gaunt, and to say his circumstances were exceptional would be underselling it. Instead, Cain was undoubtedly the single most loved and appreciated member of the regiment. Soldiers would never flinch in fear when he walked by and would even salute him. This isn't actually required of them, as commissars actually lie outside the chain of command of the guard, but they valued Cain so much they happily considered him their superior. The officers in charge of the Valhalla 597th, Regina Castine and Rupert Brocklaw, would even regularly heed his advice, so high was their opinion of him. Again, this is not something they are in any way required to do, as a commissar's only official duties boil down to making sure there's no heresy going on and making sure the troops are fighting to the best of their ability, usually by shooting anyone who looks even remotely afraid. Instead, Cain treated all the soldiers fairly as people, not giving them all the same punishment of bolt gun to the brain for whatever they did. He never outright disregarded the advice of fellow soldiers, even if internally he was calling them idiots the entire time, instead reasoning with them and at least giving the appearance of valuing their input. He would internally cuss people out all the time, but he kept it to himself, which is the main thing to do when keeping appearances up. As a related aside, I recommend this strategy highly, both when dealing with your parents and your significant other. To avoid
Okay. You know, fair. That's a fair point. Also, it's crazy to think that just a little bit of discipline is enough to make you basically just the coolest guy in the room when it comes to leadership. How fucking insane. This is 40K. I would imagine that the bar for impressive leadership is in the fucking dirt. All right, I would imagine that it's gone. It's basically a moot point. But still, the idea you could be seen as just a better leader by far, simply for policing a level of fairness and also just expecting like an equal amount of like camaraderie among your troops, and building a rapport with them on some level and just treating them like they're people is just enough to elevate you and be like, hey guys, I think this guy's actually legit. I think this guy's kind of fucking cool. Just like, that's insane to me. That really goes to show just how much commissars are a little too in love with the fact that they are very large and in charge, and they love to just use absolute terms and absolute means to essentially force people to, just to get shit done. It's kind of crazy. That is kind of crazy.
Too many spoilers, I won't be summarizing the plot of the books beyond what I've given, aside from telling you some cool stories at the end of the video. Instead, let's talk about Cain himself. If you were wondering if Cain treated everyone well because he was just that good of a guy, the actual truth of the matter is rather more complicated. As far as most people saw, this was exactly the case. He genuinely cared for those under his purview in a way that few officers in the guard did, let alone other commissars. He would throw himself into the fray alongside his soldiers without hesitation, and would never be seen far from the action once a fight started. In fact, one general of the Imperial Guard was serving in the Valhalla in 597th at the same time Cain was attached to it as a lower-ranking officer. And even when she rose to become a general in the Imperial Guard because of how brilliant a commander she was, the first question she would always ask herself in a difficult situation was, what would Commissar Cain do? As you might expect, this view of him is inaccurate. In that case, what Commissar Cain would usually do is run like hell. The books are written as if they were his memoirs, edited by Inquisitor Amberly Vale. And reading them and taking them at face value, you would call Cain
I love that he has to say that with fucking Joseph Joestar on screen.
Would only ever enter combat because not dealing with the problem would only make it worse later on. When given the choice to set out a fight and doing so wouldn't eventually lead to his death by inaction, he would take that choice every time. We just rarely see those moments in books because no one wants to read 200 pages of Cain sipping on Tanna tea and reading casualty reports while Jurgen watches porn in the corner. No, I'm not making that up, he actually does that. If Cain thought shoving you into the path of a raging carnifex would save his life and no one would find out about it later, he'd do it in a heartbeat. Or would he? Funny thing about that unreliable narrator business is that when he says he was just acting to save his own skin, there's decent odds that he's full of shit.
Yeah, I killed a bunch of people, but like war bad, and maybe I lied. Ha ha ha, wow. Outstandingly mid at best. Campaign battlefield.
His initial attempted desertion was certainly motivated by nothing more than a desire to not be eaten alive. Everything after that is a lot more debatable. If you take his word for it, he's never done anything not motivated by selfishness. And yet as you read the books, you will find that there are many times where it seems like he acted more because of altruism and heroism. That while his public image of being a witty, selfless hero is at least partially built up intentionally by himself, it's also partially true to who he actually is. Imposter syndrome, aside from being something I can no longer hear without associating it with Among Us, is something that's damn near synonymous with Cain. It's a good time to note that his memoirs are written many decades after the events actually happened. Both due to who he is and because of the fact that his reputation was ultimately founded on bullshit, it's pretty likely that a good portion of the time Cain says he acted on selfishness is really just him not giving himself enough credit. Amberly Vale, his Inquisitor friend with many benefits, even says as much herself in the annotation she writes in his memoirs. For instance, many times in the series, Cain will be fighting alongside the Guard or the Planetary Defense Force, and will comment on how they seem to be fighting especially hard compared to what he would expect, or how their morale was a lot higher than you'd think it'd be in a particular situation. As Amberly is quick to point out, it seems to go right over his head that they're fighting hard because he's leading them, that they're only sticking in as much as they are because they're under the command of the legendary Ciaphas Cain and they don't want to be found wanting. This also applies to his skill as a combatant. Cain doesn't think his fighting skills are too much to brag about. Meanwhile, he's fought every single enemy the galaxy could possibly throw at him and come out on top. He's fought in melee combat with Hive Tyrants, Orc War Bosses, and Chaos Space Marines. In his words, he was barely
He's fought Chaos Space Marines one-on-one? That's fucking insane. I would like to see that story. Can someone tell me where that story is? Because I would love to see it. I would love to see it. I want to see how that fucking situation panned out, because there's no fucking way on God's green earth a normal ass man could go up against an Astartes unless they have some type of trick that they're working with. I don't see that panning out in somebody's favor. Like, they are bred, they are designed to kill, and they don't have to try really hard to turn a squishy human into paste. It's insane to think that he could just 1v1 an Astartes of any kind, let alone fucking Chaos Astartes, and somehow come out on top. That shit sounds wild. All right, it's like if he was fist fighting an Ogren. It's equally just as unlikely for him to succeed. And Ogrens are apparently stronger than Space Marines, from what I'm told.
Hanging on by the skin of his teeth and only won because of a lucky break or outside intervention. Even if he's completely right, take your average Commissar and throw him against a Hive Tyrant. Actually, no. Take your average Space Marine and have him face a Hive Tyrant. He's gonna be turned into Citadel brand Mephiston red paint. And yet Cain fought two and came out alive both times. Sure, the two Chaos Space Marines he fought were either wounded by heavy fighting, or Cain was just parrying until Jurgen can fry them with his Melta, but these were both Cornate Chaos Space Marines. And I can assure you, with hatred in my heart, Cornate Space Marines are very good in melee combat, and Cain's fought them twice and came out on top. If you only listen to what he says, he's an asshole who just keeps getting lucky. If you take into account everything that happens, he's one of the most competent people in the galaxy with a raging case of imposter syndrome, though admittedly he is still a self-centered coward. And of course, there's that old saying about courage being the ability to keep going even when there's more shit in your pants than there is fabric. I might be misquoting that. To talk about some other characters briefly, there's three I would like to touch bases on. First off, his trusty aide gunner Ferric Jurgen. Jurgen is a total badass. He's the single best man you can possibly have watching your back. He's good in a fistfight, and he's a peerless marksman. One time, in a short story all about himself, a group of traitors tried to have him killed to avoid being caught. Jurgen tricked them by arriving to where he came from a different method to how he got there, beat the shit out of several people, and then said that the only reason he ever found out there was treachery was because the quartermaster had accurate inventory reports, and no one ever has that unless they're trying to hide something. Jurgen's a very fun character to watch do his thing. He's also a psychic blank. They found this out when Amberly Vale's pet psyker had a seizure when he walked near her. This has helped Cain survive encounters with everything from Tyranids to greater demons of Slaanesh. Said greater demon, or I guess demon princess is a better word for it, was also incredibly thirsty for Cain's chainsword.
No, I'm not helping you find
metaphorically. Jurgen also smells incredibly bad. Whether this is how his repulsiveness due to being a blank manifests, or he just smells like shit, is never clarified, but you don't want to be in an enclosed room with the guy. This is a minor plot point too, because Cain uses him as a human shield to keep people from bothering him. They need to get through the smelly wall that is Jurgen to speak to Cain, and that requires a level of fortitude most people simply do not have. For some final notes on the guy, he takes orders almost as literally as an Ogren. He assumes that because Cain is telling him to do something, there is a grand reason to be doing so, and he does whatever he's told to do without fault. He does most of Cain's paperwork as well, and carries his luggage, which he has no problems with. He's even been shown to be annoyed when he isn't allowed to do so, because in his eyes, he's Cain's assistant, and thus the only one truly qualified to do so. He not only fully buys into Cain's legend, but has never shown fear, because he just assumes whatever is happening is a part of Cain's master plan. Even with my defense of Cain earlier having been said, Jurgen could not be any more wrong, because most of what Cain does is by the seat of his pants. But it's nice to know someone has his back, and indeed, even after having served alongside the Mechanicus, the Guard's finest, and the Space Marines, he has said that there's no one he'd rather have watching his back than Gunner Jurgen. On one final note, never get in a car with him, or be on the road at the same time as him. To his credit, he's never once crashed anything he's driven, even something like an orc buggy. Unless crashing was the plan, of course. He also makes everyone riding with him nauseous and considers things like cafes, cemeteries, and imperial governor palaces to be minor obstacles to be plowed through to get to where he needs to be. And I don't think he understands the concept of a speed limit. The next character is, of course, Inquisitor Amberly Vale. Of the Ordo Xenos branch, she's very good at dealing with aliens and all that jazz. She's actually really friendly for an Inquisitor. Bit of a smartass, but she doesn't just waltz into places and scream heresy before murdering everyone, so she's got that going for her. She's got a whole gaggle of interesting people in her entourage, and she's recruited Cain to unofficially be a part of it. Both because he's Ciaphas Cain and a very capable man, and because Jurgen is a blank, and that's a very handy thing for an Inquisitor to have in her back pocket. Her pet psyker I mentioned also apparently has the biggest tits in the galaxy. Normally, I'd like to think I wouldn't bring something like that up, but Cain will not stop mentioning it whenever she's around. Usually how it goes is Cain mentions he's afraid of the psyker because she is a bit of a loon, and then he stares at her tits. To get back to Amberly, her presence is in a good amount of the books as a character, but every novel except the short stories are edited by her, so you're never going long without her input. Honestly, the series wouldn't be the same without her. Her orders are oftentimes what gets Cain into his misadventures, and Cain certainly wouldn't want her gone because even with all the danger she puts him in, she's a good friend to him, and that's always nice. By good friend, I of course mean they fuck like rabbits whenever they have the chance. She has ended his memoirs early because what they most likely ended with was Cain talking about Amberly showing him her inquisitorial rosette, if you catch my drift. It is canonical that Ciaphas Cain fucks. She's also constantly giving us additional information about Cain's adventures where he leaves gaps in the narrative, because Cain doesn't really give a shit about the larger picture if it isn't directly affecting him. Oh, and she's still an Inquisitor. If you piss her off, you are going to be unpersoned. But as far as Inquisitors go, she's about the best person you can hope to be in that profession. She doesn't just kill you because you're annoying, she'll kill you because you're hampering inquisitorial duties. I never said she was a good person, just good by the standards of people who blow up planets as part of their day job. Lastly, Genet Sola. There are undoubtedly other characters.
There is no official art of her, I believe, so I have decided she looks like this because of reasons.
She's steadfast, a brilliant tactician, and all around an effective commander in the Guard. She can make the most out of what she has to work with, leads from the front, and is the exact kind of person the Guard wants in charge of its forces. As you might expect, Cain can't stand her. As far as he's concerned, she's an overconfident idiot whose balls are bigger than her brain. And every time he has to interact with her, he's afraid of what crap she's gonna pull him into next. Even the overall commanders of the Valhalla in 597 think she's a bit crazy. And yet repeatedly in Amberly's additions to Cain's writings, we see her giving her own memoirs of events of the story. And every single time, you get to see them addressed to her as General Janet Sulla, because Janet Sulla kicks more ass than any of us ever will. Cain, in his more than understandable cowardice, doesn't really appreciate that her headstrong behavior is sometimes the perfect choice for the job. And after Cain retires, she apparently rose through the ranks to become a general who won many, many campaigns. Just like I said earlier, it was Cain who Sulla would attempt to emulate in her own campaigns, always asking herself what he would do in a situation if it looked grim or confusing. I adore every bit of the novel she's in. And as a final note, she probably had a bit of a crush on Cain, because you can only read so many paragraphs of her saying how great he is before you start to wonder if there was something going on there. Amberly even points that out, so I'm not just pulling a Tumblr on this one with two characters who breathed in the same room once. To round us off, there's one story I want to give about Cain that I really like, just so you know how badass these books can be. It's from the latest full novel, Choose Your Enemies, so here more than anywhere else, there be spoilers ahead. Cain was helping the 597th hold off an Eldar invasion of a world that was once a maiden world, and they kinda wanted it back. During this time, he finds a Slaaneshi cult entirely by accident, but gets saved not only by Amberly, who also ended up there by accident after she got lost in the webway, but a bunch of Eldar Farseers and Warlocks as well, who had been hunting the cult. Cain later on shifts from focusing on the Eldar to searching for the cult's main base to eliminate them, entirely because Amberly wasn't going to look a gift horse in the mouth and made him help her. Valuing both his sex life as well as his life, Cain agrees. At the climax of that book, I chose that word very specifically, Cain finds out that the cult was summoning a demon of Slaanesh at the spaceborne palace of the Imperial Governor of the planet. The demon princess summoned, as it turns out, was the same one who wanted his nuts. He had fought her once before since she became a demon, so by this point Cain fought her more times than the number of campaigns the average guardsman can expect to make it through. This time though, she starts chowing down on Eldar soulstone, so even Jurgen's presence and that of another Inquisitor with an anti-demon staff aren't enough. So Amberly makes a few phone calls, and the battle between the Eldar fleet and the defensive space station stops. Soon enough, an Eldar ship blasts a hole in the wall so its forces can arrive to help fight the demon. Cain initially panics about this, but calms himself solely to look cool in front of Amberly, which is just the cutest thing, isn't it? As for the Eldar, well,
I suppose
have you
it
ever
is.
played Titanfall and dropped your Titan on an enemy's and crushed it? 1, that's the most boner-inducing thing that's ever happened to me in a game. 2, the Eldar must have done so too, because aside from some jet bikes taking pot shots, all they sent was a single being to fight the demon. And then, as Cain watches what he thought was a jet bike pilot get larger and larger in his field of view, an avatar of Cain lands on top of the demon princess like an ODST. There's nothing you can do to convince me that Welcome to the Jungle wasn't playing in the background of this fight. And for once, oh sweet Assyrian, for once in all of Games Workshop's recent writings, did an avatar of Cain finally get a win, and he sent the demon right back to hell. With some help, I admit, but I will take what I can get from Cain with a K by this point. Also, Cain and Cain, haha. Funny, isn't it? And thus ends my telling of Ciaphas Cain, hero of the Imperium. Of course, I ended the story with Eldar simping. It's the first video of the year, I gotta start the year off right, but I do hope you'll read these books properly, not just listen to this video. There's a lot more stuff he gets up to after all. There's a small portion of the Guard that worships Cain as a prophet of the Emperor. That book in particular, The Traitor's Hand if I recall correctly, was probably my favorite of the Cain books. Unrelated, but my apologies if my voice is sounding even more dead than usual, kinda lost it during New Year's Eve. But I didn't wake up with a hangover, so I call it a win. Seriously though, please read these books. There's such a breath of fresh air from the usual 40k lore affair, that being everything sucks, things are bad, I know how to do nothing but complain. Thank you of course to my channel members, you are the Jurgen to my Cain, keeping me going on all my misadventures to come.
Interesting.
If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member. Either way, thank you for watching and take care out there.
Very interesting.
I would very much like to tongue punch Janet Sulla's fart box. Hello any family members and friends who are watching this video. This is what you get for being inquisitive about what I do. You get to hear me say shit like that. Happy New Year, everyone.
I don't cover non-Americans very often, but when
that's great. But yeah, that was the
Warhammer
Ciaphas
40K
Cain, the Emperor Silliest clown, fighting his funniest battles. I gotta say, this story is interesting. This character is very unique, very intriguing. I actually want to pick up a novel from this guy now. He, outside of Godric and Felix, which is probably the only series of novels I want to get from Fantasy Warhammer so far, this one in particular is probably the one I want to actually get by far. for 40K simply as like my first book if I ever get a chance to, simply because I like the idea of this character so goddamn much. I have to see it for myself. My eyeballs have to sparse through the details, and I have to see him actually go through the motions for me to truly understand and believe it. It's crazy. This guy fights space marines, chaos space marines, and he does all kinds of other crazy shit. He's survived more battles than you could shake a stick at. The guy literally is a bona fide coward, and the only reason why he doesn't actually just get away with being a coward is simply because he gets thrown into more dangerous situations, is forced to have to capitulate with the fact that he has to engage in those dangerous situations. And as a result, he not only builds up his fame by the fact that he's just a massive fucking coward who just wants to survive more than anything else. Guy literally somehow pulls a W just by doing all of those things, because it really does say a lot when the guy who's only motivated by self-interest, I guess, in the sense that he doesn't want to fucking die most of the time, that he will find ways to not die more often than not. It makes sense that a character like this would survive a lot of battles, but at the same time, it's equally just as funny that he would build a legend around the fact that he's not only just he's just a badass, but he also finds a way to survive most of his, battles and encounters with some of the most dangerous beings the galaxy has to offer, just simply because he is just this fucking crazy. Like, I mean, yes, he's got Jurgen to kind of help assist him in most instances, but it's crazy to think that he could square up against like even just a heavily damaged space marine, right, and still pull out a win. Like, there's a lot of crazy things that need to be said, that need to be understood to really unpack this. I have to see this shit for myself. It's crazy. But otherwise, Ciaphas Cain seems like a really crazy guy. He has all of the qualities to be a shit leader, but it's these negative qualities and attributes that actually make him really goated, because he has to confront the reality before him. He can't actually run away from most of his problems, despite the fact that he actively tries to. So when he's forced to confront the situation before him, he actually pulls out a W more often than not, and it's simply by the sheer fact that he just doesn't want to fucking die. And most of his strategies probably revolve around this fact. It's just, it's insane to think about that. He only gets away with being as great as he is and being able to survive most of the conflicts that he's a part of just by the sheer fact that he literally just doesn't want to die. It's crazy to me. But other than that, Jurgen seems like an interesting character. Like, he's got the blink gene. He's got all kinds of crazy shit that goes into that, and he apparently just fucking smells bad. But all of his relationships with other characters, including his own soldiers, also kind of really go to show just how how interesting of a dynamic it is to have someone who is this revered and is seen as this much of a legend suddenly do crazy, cowardly things for the sheer purposes of just not wanting to die or having to engage with the most dangerous elements of any type of war zone is crazy. It's just funny. There's a lot of funny things to be that go into this, which is probably why he is the silliest clown fighting his funniest battles, because you have to admit, it's kind of insane to think that someone who could be a coward, who only is self-motivated and has probably is more of a selfish human being than you could probably imagine or manifest in your mind, is somehow the most reasonable human being under the sun. And because he just doesn't want to die, he has a better rapport with his men. He understands them better than most, and he literally literally engages in strategies that go as far as of just trying to probably survive more often than not the encounters, let alone just fucking trying to win them. Which, when you really think about it, when you're in charge of like a massive swath of fucking human beings who are just designed to just die at any given moment, I think that being in charge of as many soldiers as one might expect as a commissar, you have to think to yourself, that is a lot of people, and trying to survive by also probably utilizing strategies that make sure that you and other people survive is probably going to do more for you than you might expect. Because you have to think about it logically, right? We're talking like seas of human beings, just like large swaths of just people with las guns, just actively trying to utilize strategies that see that not only do they survive more encounters than they do die in them, but the idea that they could outlast even some of the most dangerous elements. Because they have the numbers to truly lay waste to most enemies that come their way. Like, I would imagine, right, that putting that much emphasis and onus on just trying to survive, especially for guardsmen, that's like, you're basically, instead of just throwing them to the wolves and just watching them get churned into mincemeat, the idea that you try to keep them alive and try, like in an attempt to keep yourself alive, among other things, right? That does more for your survival rate than anything else, because as long as the men are alive, as long as you can keep as many soldiers as humanly possible alive, you're probably going to guarantee that there's always going to that they're going to win more battles than not, because the sheer numbers is just going to eclipse most enemies or factions that come your way. And there's a level of detail here that is kind of glossed over in this video, that kind of needs to be delved into, that needs to be thought about, because it's just crazy to me. And then there's the whole like Amberly situation. The idea that he also has his own biggest fan, who then later, from the sound of it, right, it sounded like she basically took over the job of being like the next I guess legendary figure outside of Ciaphas Cain himself, is kind of interesting. I didn't even think this guy could fucking retire, but then again, yeah, he probably would retire. He probably absolutely would retire. He probably would live long enough to actually achieve that, considering everything that we've heard about him so far. His life is fucking wild. And then his relationship with that one Inquisitor is crazy. I think Amberly either was the woman who was a big fan of his, or probably, who was the Inquisitor? What was the Inquisitor's name again? I don't even remember anymore. It's crazy. I'm definitely interested in wanting to get the books, though. I want to get a book in this guy's life and journey at some point in time. I'll probably just get the first one, but it's like, I have to see it for myself. There's like so many interesting things and details that were mentioned in this video that I'm just like, I have to see it for myself. But enough of that. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope to see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.